Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy, and today we're going to talk all about wildflower meadows, as well as me showing you making one in my current outdoor space. So what are wildflower meadows? Well, really, they are sections of land where wildflowers are allowed to grow. They're usually quite low growing, and this term has been very popular in the last couple of years, especially in Ireland. I'm not quite sure outside of Ireland and the UK how popular that really is. Maybe across Europe it is. Actually, wherever you are in the world, let me know, is this a term and a thing that's become super popular? I think with a lot of discussions around biodiversity loss and climate change, it's become a kind of a, I guess, buzzword. So particularly in Ireland, and I would assume the UK, wildflower seed mixes have become this super popular thing. I've seen them in kind of carriers shaped as balls. They're called bee bombs or wildflower bombs that people can just throw outside their window into empty land, and it has wildflower seeds in them and they grow up, and it's meant to promote biodiversity and really give food to pollinators. That's a huge part of this. So there are many different companies in Ireland that now produce wildflower seeds for this thing. So there's two main things I want to discuss in this video. First of all, how do you make one, and how have I made one in my current outdoor space, as well as some discussions around biodiversity and how useful are these wildflower meadows really for biodiversity and wildlife and ecology. So in order to create a wildflower meadow, you really want to start with a blank canvas. That means turning over the soil, removing any kinds of weeds, because these weeds, which are just plants that grow in places where you don't want them, there's no such thing as a weed, but you want to remove other plant species that might compete with your seeds until they get established. So that's the reason for that. So you want to remove all roots and plant material. You want bare soil. You want to turn over the soil, remove any big rocks or clumps that might affect the contact of the seed with the soil. And then you want to plant. Generally you will, because the wildflower seeds are generally a mix of stuff, you might want to have a carrier with this that can be, it's basically to bulk up the mix and help you spread it more evenly. So people use various things for this. You can use potting soil, you can use different soil mixes, you can use oats, you can use different types of cereals. In Ireland we have one called Ready Break that people use quite a lot, and that basically just helps you spread it more evenly across the soil. So first you want to start with your blank canvas. You want to prepare your bed or your land or your section of lawn that you're going to be using, and then you want to sow the seeds lightly on the surface. You can also lightly rake over the top of the soil after you've sown the seeds, or you can gently press down either with your foot or your hand to just make sure that the contact is really there with the soil, and then you can water. And after that, the maintenance is very minimal. That's also a reason why people are really fond of this, because it's minimal maintenance and maximum beauty, because all of the flowers start flowering. So that's basically it. For my own garden, as you'll see in the next section of the video, I started to, dig, well, I guess remove the top layer of grass that was existing. Then our landlord, it was going to install a shed in our garden so that we can store stuff in it, and the landscaper came for that and removed some sod and actually put down a foundation of concrete for the shed. So he actually moved all of the sod and weeds and soil that he had removed and moved it onto the bed that I was about to create. So that kind of helped me a lot. It also made me able to raise the level of the bed. As you'll see at the start of the video, it started very low, and I was considering buying soil to add on the top, so that was much easier for me. So with my bed, I did not remove all of the weeds. that was out of pure laziness, but also to maximize how much material that I had. So a lot of this was actually just uprooted grass and different weeds that I have left in there. So that will make my job more difficult. As you'll see in subsequent sections of the video, I had to go and weed and take those out so that they weren't competing with the seeds that I have just planted. That's just personal preference. That's how I like to do things. That doesn't mean that you have to do this. That's just the way I've chosen to do it, and it definitely is more work. So a couple of seeds that I have planted have begun to sprout. I sowed the seeds around 3 weeks ago, and some of them have started to pop up. When I first sowed the seeds, I also didn't feel like I had enough. So then I went back and bought another bag and then sowed again. So I'm going to have 2 kind of stages of growth because I want it to be super, super full. The company that I bought my seeds from are called Connecting to Nature. If you follow me on Instagram, you will know that I recently did a giveaway with them. They're based in Ireland. They have local workers. They really enjoy promoting biodiversity and educating people on wildlife and stuff like that. So they're a great company, and I've been really happy working with them, and also their seed mix seems great. Many companies have a variety of mixes. A lot of these are non-native. The ones that I've chosen to use are only native Irish wildflowers, so that's what I've chosen to use in my garden. And that's basically it. I will update you guys in future outdoor garden vlogs and updates on how this is coming along. It will take a good bit of time for these to mature and actually start flowering. I'm willing to wait for that, but yes, I will update you in time and how that really goes. This is not my first time using native wildflower seed mixes. I also used them in our previous place and just found they were super easy. Once you do that initial preparation, sowing your seeds, after that, you just enjoy them. There really isn't any maintenance, which is super, that's great. So I recorded me making the bed in a series of time lapses, as well as 3 weeks later when I weeded the bed and also sowed further seeds. So you can enjoy that now. excited to see how it grows, and I will update you guys on how that's coming along. So I've talked a little bit about the commercial side of wildflower meadows and wildflower seed mixes. They're super, super popular. But how good are they really for the environment? And that's something that I was very interested in learning more about. I have seen quite a few articles and papers come out recently studying this and just discussing among botanists and ecologists on this whole phenomenon. And to be honest, what I found was there are quite a few issues for biodiversity arising from the popularity of wildflower seed mixes. I feel like it's super important to talk about this openly and to get information out there. There is a lot of greenwashing that goes on in our current world. Greenwashing is basically where things, ideas, or projects are marketed to be green, to be eco-friendly and good for the environment, when in reality, unfortunately, it is not the case. And this is really, really popular in our world. And so when you're looking at something that is being marketed this way, just always have a healthy skepticism in your mind when you're looking at stuff like this, because oftentimes that is not the reality of what is actually going on. So I wanted to just touch very lightly on the reasons why wildflower mixes are maybe not so great. So first of all, if you're planting seeds, they're not wild. So wildflower, it's a term that doesn't really make any sense. Wildflowers are flowers in the wild, but you can't plant wildflowers. That's the first issue. Oftentimes the preparation of the soil that I've just explained, removing the top layer of soils, you're just removing native plants the majority of the time. Where you're putting this wildflower meadow is super, super important. I've discussed how you prep the soil for planting of these species. And really, if you're doing this outside of a garden environment where generally you have lawns that have no flowers on them and are super low in species diversity, then you're really only improving that as long as you stick with native species and non-invasive species. However, if you're doing this out in the wild and you're removing native species and native plants from already occurring habitats, then that's only reducing native species diversity, if you're following me. There has to be a certain level of respect for naturally occurring habitats. Woodlands are meant to be woodlands. Fens are meant to be fens. Grasslands are meant to be grasslands. Grasses and sedges and fescues are super, super important, and they deserve to also have their place. Yes, we need more food for pollinators, but actually what we need more is diversity of plant species that are allowed to grow, that are allowed to set seed. And this is what really the emphasis should be on. If we have a protected, let's say, fen habitat, and somebody is now removing that and is planting wildflower species that wouldn't naturally occur there, this is an issue. Plants and their habitats are often best served by respecting their natural ranges and the places where they naturally occur. There are also issues for genetics across plant species that are being cross-pollinated. These plants in production are often selected as the best plants, and that is removing natural selection and basically interfering too much with genetics and their naturally occurring ranges. Even more so, there have been frequently occurring actual issues that are caused by the planting of these mixes. There have been numerous cases where mixes that are labelled as native seed mixes actually accidentally contain non-native species or even invasive species. And then you have a situation where invasive species are colonizing at an even faster rate than they already are, and that can cause huge issues for our native species and can outcompete plants that would already have occurred there. There's also an increased risk of importing pests and diseases that are being introduced into an ecosystem that shouldn't be there. Many of you that watch my channel will primarily be houseplant owners, right? We have a variety of non-native and tropical plant species in our homes in a very controlled environment. But what you do know is that these plants need certain conditions in order to grow, whether that be humidity levels, heat and temperature, pH, all of these different conditions. But you wouldn't just throw one of these species out there and expect it to thrive. You know, we're not putting them into the habitats where they would naturally occur. That's my main point here. There's also further disturbance to our soils, which are hugely important. I don't know if any of you have seen that soil documentary on Netflix. If you haven't, go watch it. I'll put the name here because I forget. But, you know, you could be introducing different microbes to that soil and different mycelium that shouldn't be there. And that can cause issues for other native species. Are they really good for pollinators? That's another huge thing, because I feel like the marketing around wildflower meadows are to help pollinators, which of course we need to do. And many people are very aware of, you know, the issues our pollinators are facing. Insects are, to be honest, most of the time a lot of the forgotten group of fauna that people don't really consider. So are these mixes actually helping pollinators? It seems not really. As we know with caring for houseplants, the conditions that pollinators need are so complex. And to say that only just providing food is enough, that's not the entire picture. Oftentimes they need breeding habitats, they need certain plants that they may lay eggs on, certain plants that they need at certain stages of their lives. So these wildflower meadows may at best only provide short-term food supply at certain points in their life stage, and that is not, as I said, the entire picture. Usually they need far more than that, and to be honest, our native species do that best. As I touched on before, distribution patterns of habitats are super important. I know that in recent years, the discussion around climate change and our need for trees in particular has kind of brought away a little bit from a respect for naturally occurring habitats. Not everything has to be a woodland. We also need wetland habitats, we need freshwater, marine, we need fens, we need exposed rock, we need heaths. We need all of these huge, wide-ranging habitats that are naturally occurring without human interference, and that should be the focus. Especially in Ireland, we have this greenwashing that goes on around planting trees, but actually the trees that are planted are only commercially grown to be cut down, which has wide-ranging ecological impacts from water pollution to soil erosion and loss of native species, and they're non-native also. So really what I'm trying to get at here is that nature is not to be created, and really the best way to do this is rewilding. There are for sure issues in our world that a lot of humans are really trying very hard to remedy, but I feel that in that you can lose sight of a respect for Mother Nature and for how our natural world actually heals itself. So really letting the native species that are already existing to thrive without intrusion in that process is really the best way to go about this. Untouched areas are the best. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about in our small little square gardens in our residential housing estates that are not wild to begin with. I think those discussions can be had differently. Personally, this native wildflower mix that I've gotten, I will be keeping an eye on. Are they actually native? When they start flowering, actually, maybe we'll make a video where we can identify them all and discuss them. Really, it's not to say that these aren't beneficial, but it really is about location and context and how these things are approached. It can't just be a kind of paint with one brush situation where, oh, there's a piece of land here and this should be a wildflower meadow. nature is far more complex than that, and we need to have a bit of respect for how things are naturally done without our interference. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk today on biodiversity and things like that. I hope that you enjoyed this a little bit. It is a bit different than how I normally speak on my channel. I do know that in recent videos I have asked your opinions on how much detail I should be giving in educational type videos like this, but I hope that this was interesting for you. I hope it sparked something in your brain that might make you think of something in maybe a different way or a more complex way. I will leave links below to scientific papers that I really got my information from and what formed all of these ideas that I'm talking about. And I encourage you to keep an eye on these things in this space and see what people are saying and see what people are studying. Because there's only more to learn. I'm going to leave it there for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!